Hello, and welcome again to Wellness Deconstructed. I'm your host, Zia Jaffer, and today's guest is someone really special. She is really passionate about connecting the mind, the body, and the breath. She's a physiotherapist practicing for 15 years, out of which the last 10 years she got introduced to the world of fascia, and that had a profound impact on her practice. Her practice is focused on somatic bodywork using the Be-activated framework. This unique approach helps enhance body performance, healing, and managing everyday stress. And that is none other than Anjali. Hi, how are you?
Thank you, Zia, for having me. I'm really grateful to be here today and to be part of this wellness community.
It's such a pleasure to have a very good friend on this platform as well to share.
Thank you.
So why don't we start with what is fascia? I feel like it's not talked about at all. Not many people know about it. So even when I was talking to other people, they're like, what is fascia?
Yeah, so unfortunately, a lot of people don't know what fascia is. It's only become in the last 20 years that people are trying to understand what fascia is. So when we were in university, we would have cadavers and they would just take off the top layer, and that's the layer of fascia that is now being sort of discovered. It's a thin layer of connective tissue that sits right underneath your skin. It actually, you have different layers. You have a deep layer and a superficial layer. It's intertwined network of collagen fibers, which almost looks like candy floss. Okay, so it's got very thin layers, and if you squeeze it, it sort of compresses, and it connects your whole body from your head all the way down to your toes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you studied physiotherapy. What got you into fascia?
So I was a traditional UK trained physiotherapist, and about 10 years ago, I signed myself up for this course called Be Activated. A colleague of mine had talked about it, and he just said it's profound, it's life-changing, just go. So I didn't know what I signed up for, and I went. And it was profound. It changed everything. My teacher or my mentor talked about how your mind is actually connected to your body. And we tend to forget that sometimes the pain is from our mind. It's not actually in our body, or vice versa. It's in our body, and then it just kind of plays up in our mind. So I started this journey with him, and the Be Activated framework, which he uses, it talks about finding your body's cheat patterns. How does your body cheat to move? And we use this firing sequence that he taught us, and how the breath is related to that as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you use the cheating pattern, because I think another episode we did was with a posture therapist, and she was saying how we compensate, how our body compensate, and how the other part then has to sacrifice their functioning for the compensation that our body is doing. So how does fascia play a role in that?
So fascia, they found, is a very emotional tissue. That what happens in your mind actually changes the tension in the fascia in your body.
Okay.
So, if you're always stressed, or you're always anxious and, angry or worked up, your body actually feels that, and it tenses throughout your body. Fascia is everywhere in your body. It's like wearing a sock. Every single muscle in your body, every single organ in your body wears a sock of fascia. And if you keep tightening this fascia or this sock that is around your muscles are not able to fire or work 100%, nor are your organs. So your whole musculoskeletal system, your neural system, your respiratory system, they're not functioning to their full potential.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and made me think so fascia is like this protective layer.
Yes.
So when the emotions and stuff, or an impact, even a physical impact is hitting it, it contracts to protect the internal system. But if you don't release it in time, then it keeps contracting, affecting the functioning of the internal system as well, right?
Just it affects the the functioning of muscles. So your muscle is not able to fully contract or fully fire to its full potential, but you think this is normal for me, or it affects your flexibility. A lot of people say, I can't touch my toes. I keep stretching and stretching my hamstrings, but it's actually maybe there's a compensation higher up where the fascia is stuck, where we need to release to actually help the flexibility or the way the body moves and the way the body actually feels. When you have a very high tension in your body or fascial tension, the body just feels heavy, it feels a bit lethargic as well. And people don't realize that it could actually just be your fascia and the functioning of it's how it's not allowing your body to function correctly.
Interesting. That is so interesting. So how, like I heard you say breath as well, and that you connect the mind, body, and the breath. How is fascia and breath connected, or how do they help each other?
Wow, that's a big question. So with using the Be Activated framework, my teacher, we talk about the body has two priorities, okay? The first priority is to move, and its second priority is to breathe. And if you don't move correctly, you will not be able to breathe correctly. And if you don't breathe correctly, vice versa, you won't move correctly. Now, the most important thing is a lot of people don't use their diaphragm. Your diaphragm sits just below the lungs, but it actually brings in 70% of the oxygen into your body. Now, this diaphragm has a fascial connection, a tissue connection to your main psoas muscle, which is your main hip flexor. A lot of people believe that your psoas muscle is the muscle of your soul. It holds a lot of emotion inside, and if it doesn't work correctly, your breathing won't work correctly. So with my technique, what we do is we try and release the psoas muscle, but also look at how the diaphragm is working. A lot of us are sort of stuck what we call in this fight or fright mode. So our autonomic nervous system has two parts. It has a parasympathetic and a sympathetic.
Okay.
So the sympathetic nervous system is where we're constantly on a fight or fright go.
Like on the edge.
We're always on the edge. We're rushing from here to be there, and it's just go, 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 go. You've got this constant lion running after you, so you just have to keep going.
Yeah.
And then we have what we call the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our zen, our calm state.
Yeah.
So our bodies are designed to go from a sympathetic state to a parasympathetic state, a sympathetic state to a parasympathetic state. You're in a car sitting, driving, and a boda passes you, and you go straight up into a sympathetic state. You're getting late to where you need to be, and then you end up having a nice yoga session or having a nice cup of tea, and you drop back down into a parasympathetic state. So they found that the diaphragm allows us to go into a parasympathetic state just by breathing. Or activating your activating your diaphragm. And how I do that is I teach my patients how to breathe. I know it sounds silly, but a lot of us actually don't know how to breathe. We've forgotten what it means to breathe most effectively. We have a tendency to cheat and just breathe through our chest. And a lot of times I ask people, can you take a deep breath? And they'll go, and they've forgotten that, the breath comes from the belly. Come down towards the belly. Look at a baby breathe. Look at an animal breathe. They all use their diaphragm to breathe.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. Like when you see a newborn baby, they're just like the belly's going up and down constantly. And then as we grow up, we're like, no, we have to breathe from your chest to open up your chest. But it's interesting. I was thinking about Kabir when you were saying this, because he learned breathing in school, and he comes home and he's like, Mom, I learned this starfish breathing that I want to show you. So he goes like, I'm like, no, you're making yourself go in like a worse state right now. Like, calm down, let's do this slowly, So it's so interesting that like the first, like our reflex when you say breathe, you're like, and then, like it's not like a calm, composed belly breath, like you said. It always comes from the chest. Anyway, it was just something that came to my mind, and I was like, I need to really take that up.
It is, a lot of us, have to actually sit and think, how do we take a deep breath?
Yeah.
And after just doing 5 breaths, you'll actually feel that state of calmness, because your body is trying to drop you back into a parasympathetic state, which we've forgotten how to be into. We try and do meditations, go for yoga classes, all sorts of things, but we just forget the easiest way to fall into a parasympathetic state is to just breathe.
It's so simple.
It's so simple.
Yeah, we don't do it.
Yes,
right?
we don't do it. And it's one of the hardest things to actually relearn, because we love to cheat, or our body loves to find the easiest way to do a task. And what we do is we just breathe through our chest, because there's less depth going in. It's a quick breath, but we forget it's too much effort to just take a nice deep breath in and breathe out.
Yeah, that is so cool.
Yeah.
And I know that fascia is where most of our trauma and emotions are stored.
Absolutely. So fascia, as I said, is a very emotional tissue and affects everything with any kind of trauma. And they found, so my teacher, we talk about the psoas muscle, and he says it's very emotional, and it's located in our hips. And a lot of us, you hear that a lot of our emotion is stored in our hips. And we did little tests to find, is it very emotional? And by us changing what's in our mind or what state we're in, we change the way the fascia actually moves through the body.
I remember you doing that for me, with my leg lifting. You made me think of a positive event, and my leg responded much faster than when I did with a really sad event.
Yes.
And I'm like, wow, even in neuro-linguistic programming, we were studying different states of mind and how our body reacts to it. But then when I saw you literally do it on me, I'm like, oh my God, okay, there is definitely things going on here that I need to work on.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. A lot of us know about it, that yes, we hold emotions in our body, but they don't actually know what it feels like to have to be holding that emotion. So, for example, when I first met my teacher and I changed the way I practice, he literally put his hand on my chest and he asked me to breathe. And, I was just like, okay, I'm breathing, but I didn't know. And he literally just massaged a little bit off my breastbone, and I felt my fascia just move, and I just had an emotional release. I just started crying, and then I was laughing and looking at him saying, I'm not sure why I'm crying, but I feel like my body just needs to let go. And he says, you'll be surprised at how much emotion or different emotions we hold in different parts of our body, that we just don't realize that we're holding emotion. We just feel, oh, it's a little bit tight, maybe I sat funny or anything, but you may have had a childhood trauma, it could have been something at work, at home, and your body just kind of held that in your fascia like a memory that is not necessarily meant to be there and just needs to be released.
Yeah, and giving birth as well, right? Because when you're giving birth, there's so much trauma that your belly and your uterus has to go through, and as you're recovering, your fascia is the one that takes it all.
So I feel like it's even from the beginning of the motherhood journey, when you actually have the child, in vitro, that you start getting all these fascial changes, because there's a lot of tension here. Your whole body, your center of gravity, your posture, the whole alignment starts to change. But our focus is to, let the baby grow, be healthy, and we'll deal with everything after, which is what a lot of us moms do. And yes, during the actual birth, be it, a vaginal birth, there can be trauma, but also a cesarean. If you look at the amount of layers of fascia they cut through, that causes a big change in just how your body is. So I work with a lot of women postnatal to just help them realign what has changed in their body, where the fascia has been stuck, but let go of emotions that were not meant to be there and that you're not meant to hold.
And I feel like our gut and the belly area holds a lot of our generational traumas and our self-identity and worth related trauma as well. And when I came to you for the first time, when I discovered posture therapy, it was a game changer for me, but then at some point I was stuck and I'm like, okay, now what's next for me? And then I don't know.
Yes,
We
I
were friends
remember
for
this.
so long.
We
but
just had a brief conversation,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, you know, let me just try
Yeah.
check what your psoas is doing, what your hamstring's doing, because I know you've been doing a lot of, you know, strength training. You were doing posture work, but something just wasn't sitting correctly in your pelvis.
Yeah.
And I'll let you tell them
Yeah.
your experience of what happened between us.
Yeah, so it was really interesting because I was doing all the work I could possibly do to get back into my normal body type, because I know that I had an anterior pelvic tilt, and then my shoulder was tilted on one side. So posture therapy helped a lot. But at some point I'm like, okay, now there's, you know, like, again, peeling layers. So there was
Yes.
another layer that needed to be peeled. I needed to go into the depth of the journey. And in spite of us having been friends for a long time, like, it never happened. I guess the time was right when it happened.
Absolutely.
And I needed you the most at that time. Is when I came to you and you helped me, you made me understand that this is the zone 1, right? Like,
Yes.
and it's the main fascia center or something?
Yeah, so it's our core center. So we have 3 zones in the body. You know, we have zone 1, and then we have an outer circle of your knees and your shoulders. And then you have zone 3, which is your head, your hands, and your feet. And if anything in zone 1 doesn't fire correctly or gets stuck or has trauma to it, zone 2 will start kind of pulling inwards. And what happens is our body starts to implode, and we don't realize it. The fascia just pulls it down, and our bodies are designed to explode. So we forget that, and you know, we just say, oh, we've given birth, this is just part of it. But we forget that yes, we can go back to what we felt like, or even in a better state postnatal.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
as the zone 1 fascia contracts, your whole posture is like
It starts to change.
Yeah.
And fascia it sort of follows some of the Chinese meridians. You know,
Okay.
we have fascial lines, we have lateral lines, we have spiral lines that work from head to toe. So for example, the opposite hip causes a fascial pull to the shoulder, and that's what we found with you, that
Yeah.
the slight misalignment you had, yes, you were working with your posture, but if we just released the fascia that was at the center that was stuck, that fascial line just opened up, and you almost felt like, okay, this was the missing piece, and
Yeah.
I'm now back into a better
Yeah, and
alignment.
and I didn't realize that, like, my core was numb even after like doing so much work, but it was the fascia that was stuck, and it wasn't allowing the muscles to work.
Yes, to fully activate. And a lot of us don't realize that, you know, we're like, no, but I do a lot of core work, I do my abs, but it's not about that. What has switched off? And as we said, like when I said previously, your primary moving muscle is your psoas muscle. And with any kind of trauma, it will contract. And the body is so good at finding other muscles to do its job. It will
Compensate.
just compensate. It will cheat to just get the movement. So you say, oh, my hip is moving the way it should, but it's actually using different muscles or the wrong muscles to do that movement. And that's what the Be Activated framework does. It finds the root cause, and we find the cheating pattern, and we work through to help recorrect that muscle firing sequence, that your body is working zone 1 where it should be, zone 2 where it should be, and zone 3 where it should be, so that you have a 1, 2, 3 pattern, that your body's exploding rather than imploding.
Yeah,
And
that
we
is so
forget that.
interesting. I love
Yeah.
that. It's like want to take a minute to absorb that all, because
And
it's so deep. Like, I just feel like why didn't I find out about this earlier?
Yeah.
Because the whole time I had so much trauma stored, because I've had difficult deliveries both times, and I had no clue that it could be my stuck fascia having trauma inside it, or also as not just emotional trauma, but also because of the physical aspect of like
The physical changes,
change that it
yeah.
has gone through. And even now, like, you've taught me the points, and when I do them, I'm like, wow, it just makes me connect to my emotions again. Like,
Yeah.
it makes sense. Like, we're so disconnected on a daily basis to our body, but also to our intuition, to our feelings, and everything is stored in zone 1 now, I call it, you
Yes,
know.
exactly. And going back to bringing in the diaphragm.
Yeah.
The diaphragm drops you back into a parasympathetic state.
Yeah.
When you're in a parasympathetic, much calmer state, you're more connected with your mind and your body. Because you haven't got, why did that boda overtake me? Why was I late? All these things. It stops your mind from running, and you start being calm and focusing, and sort of almost reconnecting with your body. A lot of us are very disconnected. We forget, even disconnected from the left to the right, and it's just with the fascia work that I do and the points that you're talking about, it almost helps reconnect everything, or put all the dots together, and you're like, oh, okay, this is how my body is supposed to feel, and this is what being calm feels like. And I feel like, wow, I can take a breath, I can actually breathe.
Yeah, it's so true. Like after the first session with you, I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm open, and like I can sit straight with my shoulders upright again, and I can breathe easily without it being like not strenuous per se, but it was always like there's a little
bit of work needed to get that extra deep breath.
Exactly.
But it also, when your fascia is opened up, you actually feel really light. Like a load has come off your shoulders. And that's the first time when I had my first Be Activated session. I actually felt like I was walking on clouds. I said, I never realized my body could feel this light, and I felt so much taller and more upright, and just I could breathe, which I thought I was breathing normally, but I didn't realize I wasn't taking enough breath. And how that's so important, breath work is so important for your body performance. Thinking about how the diaphragm brings in 70%, or your lower lungs and the diaphragm bring in 70% more oxygen into our body.
Wow.
More oxygen in our body means your organs function better, all your neural system, your cardio system, all the systems work 70% better, where most of us are working at 30%. So there's a lot of extra energy needed just to sit, just to be, when all you needed to do was wake up your diaphragm, breathe, and just be.
And leaves you with so much more energy to do other things.
Absolutely.
as well.
And not being tired, and also affects your mind, that you're not so cranky, you're not exhausted by the end of the day, but you still have to deal with, the children, bedtime routines, homework. It just keeps you a lot more calm.
Definitely.
Well.
I feel like after my first session with you, and now I think it's a standard feeling that I have, and I know that I just want to go home and sleep, because I just feel like so at peace. And I know that I haven't cried, because you were telling me there's a lot of stuff going on, but it just puts me in a rest and digest, like parasympathetic or sympathetic. I always get confused. Which one is it?
So it's the parasympathetic state. So a lot of people, when they come for a session, they feel really light and have all this energy, but sort of at the end of the day, they're like, God, I just feel like I need to sit, or I need to lie down, I need to rest. And that's your body saying, I need to pull you back into that parasympathetic state and just rest. So your fascia just starts to realign itself and helps the body go back into a better alignment.
So like recovery back to its
almost, it's
actual
like
self.
a reset and recover, which, we've forgotten to do.
So what, in working over the 10 years with your clients, what are the main points where you've seen most emotions stored in, or points?
So mainly in zone 1, that you would find that a lot of people, when I just kind of put my hand even on their belly, they're like, ooh, that feels a bit sore. And, as I said, fascia is very superficial. So it's a very light touch that I do, but people don't realize they hold so much tension, or to them it perceives as pain, but to me it's just the fascia just needs a little bit of a nudge, and you just sort of open up. So the main area, I would say, like for emotional storage, would be sort of the core, your hips. We store a lot. We have another emotional center just on our breastbone, and actually between our shoulder blades on our thoracic spine, and another one on the base of our skull.
Wow.
And there are a few.
Oh, nice. So what about kids? Do kids also have to do like fascial release?
Well, yes. It's difficult to say how young the child is, because I do it to my daughters, but they think I'm just giving them a massage and they love it, because some of the points that we do can be a little bit sensitive and children aren't able to tolerate it as well. But I do teach the parents how to do it, but it's also just trying to get them into their breath. Over the years, you'll notice, even my daughter is 5, and I've started noticing there's certain times where she starts to cheat and starts to sort of breathe, like how you were saying, Kabir was saying, you know, do the starfish breath. So I'm just almost reteaching her, no, let's breathe like this. And when you're feeling a bit stuck, I want you to just kind of massage here. And she does it. So I do teach her a little. I tend to see a bit more older children, and also it helps with their performance in school. You know, the older we get, stress comes on, and the first thing when we're stressed, the fascia tightens, and what you'll notice is your hamstrings tighten. So you'll notice kids are very supple, very mobile. You know, they can do all sort of gymnastic things, climb and do a bridge and, you know, touch their toes. But the older they get, they start to become a lot more sedentary. They sit, they're, you know, on the screens, and what are they doing? They're actually compressing and imploding their zone 1. And when the zone 1 gets tight, it starts to implode zone 2. And it's just sort of like a ripple effect. So I try and get them to, it's not just about sitting up, sitting straight. It's about opening up this area to help zone 2, zone 3 sort of open up.
So that brings me to another question. What does fascia therapy or fascia release actually include? Like, what is the process that you take the client through?
So firstly, I would have my patient lying down and test what their zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3 are doing. Are they working as a 1, 2, 3 pattern? I actually haven't found anyone who's a 1, 2, 3 pattern in the 10 years I've been practicing this, which is really shocking. That a lot of people think, you know, they're aligned, they're working out, but they're not actually using the correct firing sequence. So first I would test that, and then the second thing I would do is see how they breathe. Because remember, as I said, the diaphragm is linked to the psoas muscle, and if they two are not working together in correct partnership, none of your zones will be firing correctly. So what I do is I'll place my hand on their, so I'll start on their ribs and just kind of have a feel of what the fascia to me feels like. And then I start to teach them or release the fascia where it's stuck and teach my clients how to release it themselves. It's very important that the work that I do, that the patients sort of take control of their body, because it's your body and it's where you feel you're stuck that needs the release. Not everyone has the same release points. Your points will be different from mine. So I teach everyone their individual release points, how their breath work is, what's best for them, what best way is them to get a belly breath. There's not only one way to take a belly breath. There are several different ways, and that's what I teach them. And then whatever exercise they are doing in their daily lives, how to incorporate this little kind of self-activation, I'd say, I call it, before they do any kind of activity or event that they're attending.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So it's not like a deep tissue massage or anything. It's just like getting like not very soft, because some points really hard.
So it obviously it depends. So there's some points that are very superficial, and we have neural receptor clusters. So it feels extremely painful in certain area where the fascia is sort of kind of knotted up. So remember I talked about candy floss. So it's very thin muscle fibers, but when you clump it, it just becomes a lump. And that's what fascia is. It just becomes a clump. So all I need to do is where I feel that clump is, I need to just sort of massage it out. It's very superficial, but to you it'll feel like I've got my elbow in there, you know, I've got my knuckles in there, but it's just how sensitive that area is. And the more sensitive the area is, it means the more emotional aspect there is linked to that tissue, that you're holding a lot more in there, some stuck emotion.
Yeah, that is so interesting. So like based on how sensitive each point is, you can tell what kind of emotions are stored
Yes,
in there.
and also how connected that client is to their body. A lot of people, you know, I talked about the sympathetic state, that, you know, we're always on this fight or flight, but we have patients or clients that are come in that are in that freeze state. You know, your body is just overwhelmed with the outside world. You just freeze and your body's just working on autopilot.
Yeah,
so you'd be like, oh, I don't really feel much what you're doing. And I'm like, I can feel a big knot in here. You know, the fascia is really stuck. And it's because the body's just numbed themselves out. They've gone into a complete defense and they freeze. And it's just a defense mechanism of the body to freeze and just shut out all outside feeling so that you don't feel any more danger or fear or pain in there. So yeah, there are some points that you won't feel much, but I will, and there's some points that will be hypersensitive.
Yeah.
And that, you know, I've had patients screaming or swearing or even sometimes just crying because they've had an emotional release.
Yeah, that is so interesting. So where should someone start after learning about all of this?
Well, I work in Gigiri. I'm based at Performance Medicine, and all they need to do is just contact me and we can discuss what the issue is and then see if we need to book in a session and check what your zones are doing, what your fascia is doing, how you're breathing, and take it from there.
Yeah, so you do an assessment first and then...
Yeah, so whilst I'm assessing what they're doing, I'm also moving the fascia and teaching them what to do, and also where their fascia stuck, give them that as homework, and obviously teach them how to breathe.
Yeah, thank you. And I've added that because you've taught me the points that I need to do particularly. I've added that into my morning routine. So before I do my posture work, I'm just like releasing my diaphragm so I can breathe better.
Opening up the fascia. Absolutely.
But thank you so much. This was great information. So you guys know what you need to do now that you've learned about fascia, and I think it's crucial for trauma release and release of emotions. And all of us have some kind of trauma stored in our body, whether it's emotional or from like a physical accident. It can be from so many reasons. So you guys know where you need to go, to Anjali. And if you are a part of the Self-Care Club, which is a membership community for high-performance women, then you get more access to Anjali because she's going to be live in there answering your personal questions. And in case you want to find out what the Self-Care Club is about, you'll find all the details in the description below. All right, so before we wrap up, we're going to add a little fun element to this with our rapid fire round. And it's going to be quick questions that I'll ask you.
Okay.
And then there's a surprise at the end.
Oh dear.
So, what's your one non-negotiable wellness habit daily?
Having me time while I drink my cup of tea.
Oh, I love that. What's your life mantra?
Just be.
Bollywood or Afro? I ask this to everyone.
Afro, definitely.
Oh, nice. And what is your favorite exercise? It's yoga or Pilates, but I'm going to switch it. Yoga or bar, because
I love bar. Absolutely love it.
Sitting on a chair or on a floor?
On the floor.
Herbal tea or green smoothie?
Ooh, it depends which it is. I'll go for green smoothie.
A night at home or away?
Away.
Morning meditation or evening meditation?
Morning meditation.
And journaling on paper or on an app?
I'm a pen, paper. I love pen and paper. I hate apps. Yeah.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
Nice. And what's the one piece of advice you would leave our audience with?
Just find your breath and just be.
Awesome. Just be, guys, okay? Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. Oh.
All right. And I told you I have a little surprise.
Oh, this is very sweet of you.
This is our appreciation for coming and sharing all this information with us. So thank you for joining me for this episode of Wellness Deconstructed. If you are watching this or listening this, that means you are one step ahead on your wellness journey. So do share it with a friend, leave a comment for us under, and like and subscribe. Until next time, keep prioritizing your well-being and see you on the next one.